Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a long-awaited, long-overdue new episode of the Garbage Time Takes podcast. All three of us are here today. We've got two cameras on, one camera off. Dennis, how's it feel to be back?
Oh man, it feels great. It feels great. Long overdue. As all of our beloved listeners may know, we've been off the airways for a while, but back like a bad penny, which I believe was one of our original season one episodes. Maybe that'll be the go-to title of this one. I don't know. It feels good to be back.
Very well could be. We also have with us Bob Yepler. Bob, unfortunately, has to get up at the ungodly hour of 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning. But he has graciously persevered. He's rallying, doing his best to be present and accounted for the pod, even if it means his face is not because he's in total darkness. Bob, how does it feel to be back?
It feels great. I mean, who else is going to give Dennis a hard time? If I'm not here, I must hold my
Oh
co-host
no, I
accountable.
I feel like I feel like in that particular instance, you do have a partner in crime that could pick up the slack for you.
I mean, Bob,
Dennis, as they say in the business, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Do it yourself. There you go. There you go.
fair enough. I mean,
Can't fault you for that one.
Speaking of giving Dennis a hard time, we might as well start there. There's been a lot of sports that has happened since the last time we were on the airwaves. We can get into baseball in a little bit, but one very pressing concern is the absolute discombobulation, dysfunction, dysregulation of Dennis's favorite Cincinnati Bengals. It started with Joe Burrow getting the record contract extension. Dennis, on this very podcast a few episodes ago, was adamant that Joe Burrow would take the hometown discount. He wasn't like those other guys, he wasn't like those other quarterbacks, said the jaded ex girlfriend. But alas, here we are, and Joe Burrow not only has a fat contract extension, but a bum leg. And the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-3, and it feels like very, very quickly, Dennis, this season could get out of control before it really even has a chance to get off the ground.
Right. Derek, I don't even know where to start, man. I guess I'll start with the here and now. You led right into it. This week in Arizona, down in Glendale, uh, down in your neck of the woods, Derek.
Dennis, should I
And
make a trip? Should I make a trip? While you're ranting, I'm going to look at the ticket prices.
they should be, they should be paying you to show up to this game. It's an absolute disaster of a game with what we got going on right now. Uh, and maybe the prices are a little more expensive because you actually get to watch the Cardinals, which are apparently a half decent football team. So here's the thing. This season, if you just look at the schedule, it's quite simple. This is a must win game. You quite simply cannot fall to 1-4 and expect to go anywhere this season with just the train wreck of a schedule we have left. Buffalo, who looks good, Kansas City, who is of course always good. Baltimore still on the schedule again. There's just there's just too many good teams on this schedule that, quite frankly, we have zero chance against the way we're currently playing. And so, for this week, absolute must win. And you hate to say that this early in the season because it's just uh, not the position you want to be in.
I've got
Oh my gosh,
I've
longer
got
term. Go
I've
for it.
$27 to sit
Oh man.
in
Oh
four
man.
in section 454, row 12. Nosebleed seats for $27. That's not bad. That's
That's
not
not
bad.
bad at all. That might be worth it. That might be worth it on a Sunday afternoon out there in Arizona to go see some boys toss around the rock. I mean,
Dennis, here's a question I want to pose to you. I want to pose this question to you.
please do. Please do.
And this is not going to be a Zach Taylor question, even though you know very well that I love to absolutely rip Zach Taylor for being a brain dead idiot. But I'm not going to do that here.
I thought you
Ins-
were gonna say love Zach Taylor, and I was gonna correct you immediately.
Instead, what I'm going to ask you, Dennis, is like you mentioned, you have quite the schedule coming up. You have the Cardinals this week, the Seahawks next week, and then you get the 49ers, Bills, Texans, and Ravens. Granted, the Texans are what they are currently. CJ Stroud has played very well. They're a 2-2 team. But what we're really worried about is the 49ers, Bills, and Ravens, Dennis. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to sit Joe Burrow this week and next week, then with the bye week 3 weeks from now, that he can be as near 100% as possible for the 49ers? Do you think that Joe Burrow at his current capabilities is better than your backup in terms of being able to at least win this football game against the Cardinals?
Absolutely not. He's not better. No. And I know there's all the contract stuff, and I can, rant about that as I've ranted to both of you several times, but I'll put that aside just for this conversation, and I'll just focus on the actual team that we've assembled this season. Joe Burrow in his current state is not the best quarterback on this roster. You can't convince me of that. He can't move. He can't get out of the pocket. And when he's in the pocket, he can't make a pass within 5 yards of a wide open dude because he can't play on his back leg. So you can't convince me that any other quarterback in this league who's on an active roster and has no injury problems, aka our backup quarterback Jake Browning, would be worse than Joe Burrow is right now. And that's the fact of the matter. He can't move. The guy can't move and he can't play in his leg. What is he going to do? And defenses know exactly what we're going to do. The only thing that he can do is throw passes under 10 yards, and we can run the ball with Joe Mixon. There's absolutely no threat of us throwing it deep because he can't do it. So I don't understand what the point to trotting him out there week after week is. Maybe his pride. That's the only thing. Like, the only thing is he's not going to take himself out because he's convinced that he's the best way or the only way that we can win games. And so somebody else, aka Zach Taylor, which is I'm assuming what you're alluding to in some part, or somebody else with this organization, freaking Mike Brown, who drove him around in his golf cart 2 weeks ago in
That was such
practice
an
and probably told him
awesome
to buck up,
visual.
needs to say, this is not good for this organization, long term or now. It's a lose-lose.
Correct.
It makes no sense.
Correct.
I want to see Jake Browning.
Because here's the thing, Dennis. Obviously, it's still very early in the season, but the panic button could be hit very soon. Because, like I mentioned, with the 49ers, Bills, and Ravens coming up, I mean that is no small task. And already sitting at 1-3, you've got to find a way to win 2 games here. Got to find a way to win 2 games here. And ultimately, the question is, say you go 1-1. Say you go 1-1, you beat the Cardinals, but lose to the Seahawks without Joe Burrow. I feel like you'd have to be okay with going 1-1 if it meant having a near 100% Joe Burrow coming out of the bye week to take on the gauntlet of the 49ers and Bills back to back. That, I feel like, gives you the best chance for success throughout the rest of the season in the hopes of saving it.
The only problem, like, and I understand where you're coming from, and I do agree for the most part. The only problem with this line of thinking is that we don't truly know 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months of rest is truly going to heal. It's an immeasurable amount of time. We don't know exactly how long, because it's sort of one of those nagging injuries, at least my understanding, that can appear to heal after a certain amount of time and not really be healed to the point in which playing football at the level that these guys do is, an activity that can be handled. And so, I mean, that's the only kind of problem with that plan. But I view it in a very similar way, where I, on a week to week basis, does this guy or this guy give you the best chance to win? And for me right now, the answer to that question is it's Jake Browning. And so until you see through practice and scrimmage and whatever else you need to see that Joe Burrow can actually move and throw a competent pass, then what are we doing here?
Bob, I'll come to you because we don't want you to fall asleep over there. before the season, and Dennis, I'm sure you'll be able to piggyback off of this once Bob gives us his thoughts. Jamar Chase had said, if I recall correctly, that he would have preferred Joe Burrow to sit for as long as it takes, if I even remember, till week 6 if he had to, for him to give them the best chance to win down the stretch the rest of the season. I almost feel like, hindsight is 2020, but Jamar Chase was onto something. Because the Bengals sit
No
at 1
kidding.
and 3, and I mean, I like to think it certainly could have been possible for Jake Browning or even Bengals legend AJ McCarron to possibly go 1 and 3 with the schedule as it current is. So Bob, you have long been a Cincinnati is due for regression to the mean for quite some time. Where do you stand on Joe Burrow? Should he have sat out? What do you see for the Bengals moving forward the rest of this season?
Well, Derek, thank you for coming to me. I am awake and alive and well at this current state. I think that we really need to take this back to the beginning here. We need to take it back to the beginning. We need to think to ourselves: is this behavior from Joe Burrow explicable? And the answer to that is absolutely 100% yes, it is. Um, you know, this is because one time is a fluke, two times is a pattern. And Joe Burrow, Dennis, we kind of didn't really talk about it. Dennis, you kind of asked Dennis about it. We kind of moved on to how the current state of affairs is, but we didn't really talk about the fact that, you know, team guy, family man Joe Burrow here, Joe Shiesty, uh, you know, backed up the Brinks truck and flopped his nuts all over Mike Brown's wallet and basically forced the organization into paying the piper. And now the organization says we paid the piper. Now we got to put the guy out there. What are we going to do? Bench the $700 million man for Jake Browning? Like, are we serious here? Mike Brown also going cheap on the backup quarterback. What are you doing, Mike Brown?
Right. No. Right. Oh man, that's gonna get me fired up. Go ahead.
I will blame Mike Brown for going cheap on the backup quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater is available, Dennis.
We had all off season.
I mean, the Texans have Davis
Dennis,
Mills
don't worry,
and
AJ
Case
McCarron's a
Keenum.
proven.
The Texans
AJ McCarron's a proven backup.
He is a proven
Where's Mike
backup.
White?
Mike White is in Miami, I believe. Mike White is backing up
I know.
in Miami. Yeah.
Sorry,
Dennis,
it was rhetorical.
if I were you, I'll just give you some free advice, Dennis. If I were you, I would be giving Nick Foles a call right now, getting him in there. Get on the blower. It's time to come back. Joe Burrow, you're done.
Does Carson Wentz need a call, Bob? Does Walk It to him Wentz need a
call?
No.
Jake Browning. Give me Jake Browning.
Dennis, praying for Jake Browning. You know things are in desperation city when you're praying for Jake Browning, potentially AJ McCarron to come in there and get
Ryan
the job
Finley.
done.
Bring back the savior Ryan Finley.
Jeff Driscoll.
The fact that we've had to stoop to the level of the Cardinals and Josh Dobbs. The fact that you would probably rather have Josh Dobbs on Sunday.
Josh Dobbs
by a country mile over Joe Burrow, who you just paid a Brinks truck to, is a disaster. And it also,
absolute mismanagement.
You don't know how this exactly played out, but when I said one time's a pattern or two times is a pattern, Joe Burrow taking his piece of the pie, saying I'm going to need all that, and and the cherry on top with my contract. Oh, and by the way, I'm the man. I'm not coming out under any circumstances, even though I'm playing like Garbaggio and I'm hurt. It's kind of not a great look for Mr. Joe Shiesty. And, I've been reliably informed by a lot of NFL greats that if you're on the field, you're healthy and you're able to play. So we're judging you as if you're able to perform. And Joe Burrow has looked like arse the past couple weeks. And like Dennis says, they become completely one-dimensional. Dennis was yelling for Joe Mixon to be axed from this team prior to the season.
Yeah, what a mistake that was. He's been our savior.
That's right, Dennis. Don't you forget it.
All they have is Joe Mixon. Jamar Chase is in the locker room getting interviewed, and he looks like
wide open.
He's yelling that he's wide open every play.
Which he is.
I mean, I mean, he looks. I mean, he legitimately looks just like down and like sad in these interviews that I've seen.
Dennis,
And
He is.
and
it all goes back to one of my favorite Twitter/X graphics of all time. The Stickman drawings of Joe Burrow behind Penei Sewell throwing
No,
to
Jamar
X
Chase. Yeah.
wide receiver versus Joe Burrow getting sacked throwing to Jamar Chase. And Dennis, the offensive line, is it still a mess?
The offensive line isn't the problem. This was a non-contact injury, if you recall, in training camp. This had nothing to do with the offensive line. This is just one of those flip accidents. I mean, sure, could we continue to improve the offensive line? Yeah, absolutely. This is just one of those unfortunate situations as far as the injury is concerned. I want to circle back real quickly though and just talk about uh, piggyback off of Bobby's comment about how bad Joe Burrow's been. Everybody knows that. The one game that we won this year, the Monday Night Football game at home, a must-win against the Los Angeles Rams. Joe Burrow was the worst player on the field.
Yeah, it
You
was
can't
kind of a
convince me
miracle you
otherwise.
won that one.
We won that game because the defense was, and I know Derek made the comment later in the chat, against a crappy Rams offense. Fair enough, but the defense was locked down when they needed to be. Joe Mixon ran the ball well, and miraculously, we were able to get the ball into the hands of Jamar Chase 5 yards down the field, and he was able to do something with it. That's the only reason that we won that football game, and it's because Joe Burrow did absolutely nothing spectacular, and we won despite him instead of because of him. And every other game that we've played this year has been an absolute freaking disaster. So there's just absolutely zero encouragement from my side that he's going to be able to go out there and perform against the Arizona Cardinals this week. Although he's not even on the injury report and is expected to be a full go. So I guess rip to the season. Hopefully I don't even know what to think about at this point.
Dennis, well, last question because we don't want you to be sad for too long. We've got plenty to talk about, plenty of other things to be sad about.
yeah, I got to get a final word on this too, Derek. I'm sorry.
We will get you a final word, Bob. I was actually gonna come to you with this question next. Dennis, what is the panic meter? What is the threat level for the outlook of the rest of the season at this current time in your mind?
What's the scale? Like 10 is like full panic? I mean, I don't even know where this falls on the panic meter because I've already given up. So I don't even know if it's like I don't even know if you can panic like 11. Like what is beyond like I've
Yeah,
already panicked and now it's
I
just over.
suppose
Acceptance?
total dejection and acceptance of a ruined season would quantify as an
Right.
11 on the panic
Right.
scale.
Yeah, we're pretty much I mean, I guess we could say we're at the edge of that though because I guess we'll say a 10. If we win this week and look a little better, the panic will be brought back to the season could be salvaged. If we incur a loss this week, it's an 11. It's
Understood.
over. We are
Bob,
screwed.
Dennis called it a must win. Is it a must win or a can't lose in your opinion? And feel free to piggyback on that with your final thoughts.
Um, I'd say it's a little bit of both, but I would go with a can't lose.
Okay, okay.
Um, in the sense that there's just, I mean, essentially the same thing, but you just given the fact where the Cardinals were prior to the season and where you were, and now 4 weeks in, it's flipped on his head. I mean, I know Dennis has got to be sick to his stomach knowing that Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns are likely going to finish significantly above the Bengals at this current trajectory. Uh, Dennis, also, I'd like to point out that if you allow Mike Tomlin by Joe Burrow's ineptitude to go 500 this season, again, I keep saying this every year, Dennis, I am going to lose my ish. Get
It's
Jake
gonna
Browning
happen.
in there.
It's gonna
Put
happen.
Dennis, put in a phone call. I
Thank
don't
you.
care what you got to do. Get Skip in there. It's time to make the adjustment. Um, yeah, this is a very very bad look for the Bengals. They're 3-point favorites. FBI's got them at a 64% chance to win. Um, if you lose this one, it's just what we call over, and you might as well try to tank.
We didn't even talk about the contract.
That's where
We
I'm
didn't even
at.
talk about it. It's unbelievable.
Dennis, not good for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Dennis, would you like to have any final comments on the contract?
Yes. Yes, I would. And I've been waiting for this moment. Now I don't even know where to begin. But people are dancing in the streets of Cincinnati. I'm hearing, after the contract is announced, we got our man. It doesn't matter. We can win as long as we have him out there. I got a news flash for you, everybody. It takes freaking 22 guys, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, out there in a full roster to win football games and make deep runs in the playoffs. And when you spend over half of your salary cap on one individual, say bye-bye to everybody else who's helped you had any sort of success to this point. And I know it's not the exact same, but I thought we were going to be able to build a long-term dynasty here on the backs of Tom Brady's line of thought, and it's just not going to happen. And I guess, if you would have caught me about 2 weeks ago, I would have had some more irate thoughts. I maybe have mellowed out a little bit and into a stage of acceptance. And I just don't have optimism about this team. I don't have optimism about this team's future because of the utter mismanagement by the front office. Now, I will say in their defense, to not blame it all on them, it was partially the fault of every other quarterback and every other organization paying the freaking bag, aka Justin Herbert, who doesn't deserve anything. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, to name a few.
What about Daniel Jones?
That set the Daniel Jones, who set the bar to the point where we couldn't give Burrow less than that, or it would have been nearly a crime against humanity. So we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as that goes. And I try to be sympathetic to that, but at the same time, it's just not a strategy that's going to build long-term success, in my opinion. It's just not. And I know the Kansas City Chiefs have managed to do it and do it successfully. But if you flash back, and maybe this is a good transition to their week 1 loss against the Detroit Football Lions, baby. What could they not do? What could they not do? They couldn't block for Patrick Mahomes. It was a one-man show out there. And when they could protect him, his receivers were dropping passes left and right because he was throwing to Sky Moore and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And I looked at that game and I said,
don't forget
Kadarius Toney. And I said, welcome to the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals receiving corps.
Oh,
That's
no.
what I said.
Oh, no, Dennis. Dennis, don't tell me you're not going to be able to keep one of Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. You've got to keep one of them.
Well, Jamar's freaking pissed off, so he's going to be out the door if he can, which I don't blame him.
Well, I think
He's
Jamar
on the
Higgins
edge
is
of
a constant
abyss
injury
right now.
problem.
I think Jamar just has an alpha mentality where, similar to the Randy Mosses, the Terrell Owens, the Ocho Cincos of the world, in their mind, they're always open. And so I think that's his mentality. I don't think he's got anything. I think he hates losing, and he always feels like he's open. And I think
And
that's
I'm going to have to take a back seat to Joe Burrow once again because he's the man in Cincinnati and got all the money, and I'm never going to be that here. So see you later.
Well, if he'd love to come to Detroit, I think we'd be happy to take him, Bob.
True. And
I don't blame
Derek,
I don't blame a single guy. I don't blame a single guy on this roster for being upset, for feeling like the wool's been pulled over their eyes. I view it very similarly to how I would view being on the PGA Tour when Jay Monahan went and go talk to the Saudi Arabians about live golf. Like they got screwed over, okay? They got screwed over, and I wouldn't blame them all for wanting to get the hell out of there.
Bob,
Dennis,
go ahead.
Dennis, here's the deal. I hate to say it. I really do. Part of me hates to say it. Part of me doesn't hate to say it. But at the same time, Dennis, I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you that this was going to happen, and I tried to cushion you the fall. I tried to say, Dennis, Joe Shiesty is not going to take a discount to stay in Cincinnati, Ohio. Give me a break. Uh, well, I tried to warn you about the live golf thing too, but that we're past that at this point. But Cincinnati, Ohio, Dennis, Ohio. Um, we're you're just gonna have to pay the freight, which you did, and you better pray that for your sake, that your brother and other people that were dancing in the streets were correct, because you know when inevitably, and as you know, and inevitably in a year or two, when you're gonna have to lose some significant talent because you can't pay the freight, uh, I'm praying it's not Dark Ages, Dennis. I'm praying it's not Dark Ages. I'm praying Joe Burrow is that guy, can return to that guy that we have seen at points. But Dennis, I tried to cushion your fall. I tried to cushion your fall, Dennis. I'm looking out for you. I'm always trying to look out for you, buddy.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I will say, in defense of my loving brother, who I think does listen to some of these, shout out to you if you are. He was sort of neutral, because me and my dad particularly were on very opposite views, and right, and I got some sympathetic texts basically saying I see both of your arguments, and it could go either way. So I don't think he was necessarily dancing in the streets, but he also wasn't ready to tear down the walls, as I am, and still am today.
Yeah. There's a lot of season left to be played, Dennis. Time,
There
unfortunately, for
is.
the Bengals is running out. But don't lose hope just yet, Dennis. Don't lose hope just yet. We're only 4 games in. There's 13 more games to be played.
Caleb
Hopefully,
Williams is available in next year's draft, Dennis.
Thank God.
hopefully for your sake, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals can turn it around. Bob, let's turn it over to the other Kings of the Jungle. The Detroit Motor City Kitties, Bob. The Detroit Football Lions are 3-1 and in sole possession of the NFC North. I don't even think we had a pod the week after the Chiefs win. I don't think we've actually had a pod since football season started, if my memory serves me correctly. Bob, the Detroit Lions are a fun football team, and a good football team, most importantly.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
We
but
passed the torch.
this is just a me coming out here and taking everybody's names kind of podcast. So I'm just going to start from the top. Chicago, you stink. You're going nowhere. Justin Fields stinks. Who would have thought that? Oh wait, Derek and I saw that about away. Minnesota Vikings, yeah, perennial choke artist. Jordan Love thought he's something. Garbaggio, we put him in his place last week. Um, can't do anything. You know, I will say this, and Dennis maybe can back me up on this one. Derek, if you were if you were in a group chat with the three of us during a Lions game, you would have thought that the Detroit Lions were coming out of the dark. We're in the dark ages. Derek, every 5 seconds, it's going down. I mean, I've never seen somebody complain so much. You know, you know, Jared Goff throws the ball, completes the pass. Oh my gosh, it was such a floppy pass. I mean, oh my god, there's just no velocity on the ball.
I mean, to
I
be
mean,
fair,
Derek, every
to be fair, he throws a very soft, fluttery ball 3/4 of the time.
Okay. I am backing you up on this, Bobby. First of all, just got to make the comparison. Derek during a Lions game is how I just was about the outlook of the Cincinnati Bengals for the next 5 years. It's over. We're screwed. Uh, but I just remembered one specific example, Bobby, and I think I messaged you when this happened. Derek puts in the chat, Jared Goff throws such a floaty pass or something. It was like a floaty ball or something like that, and it had literally just been like a 20-yard catch and run from Sam Laporta with like a first down on like 3rd and 15. It was just like a clutch moment, and it was a major criticism.
And I hate to bring this up, Dennis, but this is another key moment, a key example from Derek Rezio. Like game, I don't know, 1 or 2, Derek on one drive infers that he needs Jared Goff to be murdered. He wishes that Jared Goff would have been murdered on the field so he could have been taken off. And 3 seconds later is praising Jared Goff as the second coming.
That
I
was
mean,
one. That
I've
was
never
one of my.
seen.
That was one
He
of
was,
my best moments as a Lions
he was
fan of
wishing.
all
He was
time.
wishing for a hit. He was calling for a hit job on Jared Goff so he'd be taken out of the game. And then next second, yelling, saying that Jared Goff had just saved us. I don't really know what to say. I mean, the Motor City Kitties are the exciting team. They're the real deal. Um, and this week we're gonna kick the arse of the Carolina Panthers. That's just not even a question. We've got businesses to take care of about who the true king of the cats are in this league, and it's not the Panthers. Let me tell you that much. Um, so if the NFC North doesn't get won by the Detroit Lions at this point, utter failure, utter disaster. Um, SOL. I mean, all of the above. And even if Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers even sniff a division title, I am going to barf. I'm going to yak, and you may never see this camera come on again, because I may be off this podcast completely because of my disappointment of the Motor City Kitties. Everybody, acting like Johnny Come Latelys to the Detroit Lions. I'm watching the national media. I'm keeping receipts. Nobody was talking about the Detroit Lions, when they were making a run. They all hated on Dan Campbell, saying that he was over the top. When he was biting kneecaps, saying that we were going to bite kneecaps. They were making fun of him, saying he's,
A lot of
what was
receipts on
that?
Colin
They're
Coward,
garbage.
Bob. A lot of receipts on Colin Coward.
Saying he was garbage. I've heard a whole lot of radio silence. I've heard a whole lot of silence on that front, and I've heard, oh, look at the Detroit Lions, they're for real now. Give me a break. Uh, don't act like you love us now because you never gave us one iota or ounce of media coverage. A bunch of fake bandwagon fair weather fans, and just to add it in there, screw you to the NFL because we still can't even catch a break even when we're supposed to be good from you. So that's all I got to say. Sorry, I'm coming for everybody's heads today.
Bob, I mean, the refs tried to screw job us in Lambeau. There was no question about it. No question about it. Phantom hands to the face on Aiden Hutchinson, gives him a first down. Phantom not unsportsmanlike. Phantom unnecessary roughness on Alex Anzalone for going shoulder to a shoulder with Aaron Jones. And then apparently the Michigan State football clock operator now resides in Lambeau Field and gave the Packers an extra second because the refs are blind. I mean, it's just. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't even care. I don't care about week 2 when Aiden Hutchinson was held on the Seahawks game winning touchdown in overtime. I do not care, Bob. And you know why I don't care?
It was atrocious.
Why?
Because the Detroit Lions have proven themselves over the course of the past now 14 games in which they have gone 11-3 during that stretch, that they are a great football team that can overcome adversity. We saw it in week 1, fighting, clawing, doing their best to pressure and force Patrick Mahomes into making a mistake. To his credit, Mahomes was pretty good, but he airmailed a couple passes, putting pressure on their wide receivers, forcing them to drop balls, and you come out with the win. And then in week 2, maybe you're feeling yourselves a little bit too much. The Seattle Seahawks are too good of a football team to feel yourselves against. and we lose. And you know what the Detroit Lions did next week in week 3, Bob? Absolutely crushed the Atlanta Falcons offense. I don't think they had over 200 yards of total offense even. Week 3, steamrolled the Falcons. The offense doesn't even look like great, but the defense stepped up, answered the call. Then in week 4, the NFL said, you know what, Detroit? You're too good. This year's schedule, we're going to force you to go to Arrowhead and Lambeau Field in prime time on Thursday night 2 times in the first 4 weeks of the season. Let's see if you can hang. And what did the Detroit Lions do, Bob? They go into Lambeau Field. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets beer poured on him. Sam Laporta comes through in the clutch. Josh Reynolds comes through in the clutch. The defense, with a multitude of sacks, making Jordan Love look like a high schooler. And they come out and they shut the door. Even with all the tomfoolery and the bulljivery that went on during that game, they answered the call. And they got it done. And now the Carolina Panthers are the next victim on the list. Bob, we're going to the Super Bowl.
We're receipts on these teams. We're keeping the receipts on these teams. We've been horrible for so long. We've got beef with everybody. We're keeping receipts. It's time to come collect because it's our time. It's our time now. Not the Packers, not the Bears, not the Vikings. If any of them sniff the division title, we've failed.
Dennis, you had, some things to say when I started declaring after the Lions week 1 win over the Chiefs. When I started saying 17-0, 16-1.
No. That was before the season started, my friend.
Oh, that was before the season even started?
That was in the preseason.
Oh!
That was before the season started.
Well, bully for me. Well, anyway,
right,
Dennis.
Right.
Anyway. I'm sure, have watched your fair share of football games. I'm sure you've at least seen Lions highlights on Red Zone. I know their schedule often overlaps with the Bengals, but in the first few weeks, they actually haven't. Dennis, what are your thoughts on the Detroit Lions, and do they in any way, shape, or form remind you of the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals that found their way in the Super Bowl?
I've been very impressed. I mean, and I expected to. And I mean, you can check the tapes. There's
a lot of Honolulu
a
Blue Kool-Aid
point
that was drank throughout this entire podcast this offseason.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I mean, it's not like I was on here with Bobby's regression take. Well, you can't take a regression take against the Detroit Lions, but I wasn't on here, trying to put my foot down on
Dennis,
top of the Lions hype. I wasn't trying to put my, be the naysayer. I was just pushing back against the 17-0 unquestioned Super Bowl champs is all I was pushing back against. And to that end, I've been very impressed. I mean, it's only been 4 weeks. There's a lot of football left to play, just like you can say that the 1-3 Bengals are still alive and well if they can string together a few wins. The Detroit Lions are, they need to go out every single week and play their best football. That goes without saying, but I've been impressed by what I've seen. I think Jared Goff is a more than competent quarterback. He runs the system very well. The defense has looked much, much improved over what we've known the Detroit Lions defenses to be over the last few years. And it's a hungry team. Dan Campbell, hats off to him. I know that he got a lot of crap in the national media. I've always been a fan ever since day one of Dan Campbell. And I'm happy that he's been doing the job that he's doing in Detroit right now. So, yeah, I mean, really, it's nothing but good things to say about the Detroit Lions.
I gotta ask you guys a question. Did you guys see Dan Campbell's quote from earlier this week?
Read it off.
From earlier this week, I didn't know.
If you're hunting us, you don't have to look far. We'll be on your front porch when you open the door. Is that not one of the coldest?
Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
Is that not one of the coldest, hardest lines you've ever heard a coach drop? I mean,
I'm like John Wick-ish right there.
I'm about ready to run through my wall right now. Every time I read that quote, it fires me up like you wouldn't believe. I don't know. There's just something about that just strikes a nerve with me where I'm just like, man, that type of mentality. I've never seen a Lions team with that type of mentality in my now 25 years of living on this earth, and I don't know.
Did the team have Did the team have the mentality like that under Jim Caldwell?
Absolutely not.
Did,
That
did they
team
have
was so,
that mentality under Jim Schwartz? I don't think so, Derek.
kind under Jim Schwartz. The defense was tenacious. The defense almost Bob. Here's what I'll say about the Jim Schwartz mentality. They weren't going to be waiting for you on your front porch. They were going to be trying to break in because they were just a tad bit undisciplined defensively. I think
Oh,
Ndamukong
oh,
Suh
okay,
and
okay.
Nick
That's true.
Fairley were
That's
trying to
true.
storm through the gates of Normandy, and needed to be held back a little bit more than they needed to be encouraged to push through. But really, yeah, really, it's been since the Jim Schwartz days. And only the Jim Schwartz days have I seen a Lions team even have remotely close to this mentality. It surely was not the, newborn baby lamb that was Jim Caldwell's mentality, where it was survive and advance and play scared and not to lose. And it surely wasn't Rod Marinelli who championed our 0-16 season. And it surely wasn't Steve Mariucci, for as good as he was as an offensive mind, he was just a little bit too far ahead of his time for what the Detroit Lions were ready to do as an organization. And it surely was not Matt Patricia, who was just an absolute clown show, an absolute loser, who set this organization back 5 years only for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to build it brick by brick from the ground up to where we stand today, waiting on our opponent's front porch. Could not be more pumped.
No, I mean, I think Dan Campbell, he's just been dropping some lines this year because I still remember what he said after the Kansas City game week 1. And he was asked what he learned about his football team. And I had sent this guy to you guys, and he said, I didn't learn anything. I confirmed what I already knew.
That's right.
And that was just, I mean, if that doesn't inspire those guys on that roster, it's like everything that he says is just, and it makes sense from where, he comes from. It's so player focused and it's so intentional with a point to fire up his football team and either just put them on the right track. And I think that philosophy is obviously starting to pay dividends when you combine it with the talent that you guys have.
Bob, any thoughts?
They don't want to see us, Derek. They don't want to. They don't want to deal with us. And you better tell your brother that we're coming.
Are we coming?
Yeah, we are, baby. Because it's not going to be any more. How about them boys either? I'm keeping receipts on that too, Derek.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to that one. I'm looking way forward, Derek. I'm looking forward to that one.
Bob, I sure hope so. I was telling you guys, that is the one game where I would love for the Detroit Lions to prove me wrong. They're going to be, not only do they have to go up against the Cowboys, who really have had our number for as long as I've lived outside of a miracle Matthew Stafford game-winning drive, the classic fake spike at the goal line drive. I'm sure you guys have seen that clip. I was at that
Love
game.
fake spike.
I was at that game. It was legendary. Outside of that, the Cowboys have really had our number. Not only have the Cowboys have had our number, but when we go to D-Town, we get D'd down by the NFL and their officiating crews. So I'm hopeful for that game. Not going to be expecting too much. But Bob, the Lions have a chance in these next few weeks to really put some ground between them and the NFC North. And I look forward to going for the emotional roller coaster with Jared Goff as my QB1 each and every week.
there we go. There we go.
I'm riding with him, Bob. I'm riding with him.
Here's the difference between Jared Goff and about 95% of quarterbacks in the league. Jared Goff understands his limitations. He understands what he can and cannot do. And he plays within that structure. He knows. I am not Patrick Mahomes. I am not Justin Fields. I'm not trying to bust loose for 25 yards scramble. I'm not trying to make acrobatic into triple coverage throws. I am here to be to manage the team, to be a general,
A
to secure the
distributor.
football, and to distribute to the open man and take whatever's open. And you know what? I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him. Just keep on keeping on. The running game's going to come along. David Montgomery looking good in his return. Uh,
First time David
we coming,
Montgomery had
baby.
ever beat the Packers in his career.
We coming.
We're coming. I tell you what. I don't know what it is about Jared Goff, man. I just love him and I hate him simultaneously. You know, he does. It feels like 95% of the time he does the right thing, but it's that 5% of the time where he just does something so absolutely boneheadedly stupid that gets me all riled up again. I don't know what it is, but it's a fun ride. And Bob, the reinforcements are here. The cavalry is coming, and Jameson Williams is here to stretch opposing defenses thin. We don't know what we're going to see this weekend from him, but Bob, tell me you're excited as I am about the return of Jameson Williams to the Lions offense.
I am very excited for some 50-yard floppy balls to be launched into the air um, and recepted by none other than Jameson Williams busting down the sideline.
Let's not forget that Jameson Williams had to slow down to a near full stop on his first career touchdown on the long ball Jared threw because he just wasn't ready for that type of speed. Let's not forget. But the play was made. That's all that matters. Dennis, any thoughts on Jameson Williams being granted an early return from his ridiculous garbage suspension from the NFL over gambling on non-NFL games?
Right, an early release that was more than well deserved. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him take the field. I mean, he's shown flashes, and unfortunately, just hasn't been on the field to do that consistently. So hopefully, this is the beginning of that, and I understand the excitement because I, he might be pulling down 50-yard floppy passes from Jared Goff, just like Bobby said.
Correct. Correct. One last thing, and then we can move on to some MLB baseball. Where do you guys rank your top 6 teams in each conference at this moment in time? Just out of curiosity. Dennis, we can start with
Go ahead,
you.
Bobby.
Oh, we'll start with Bob.
Oh, okay.
We'll start with Bob then. Dennis isn't ready. He's got to look at all the teams quick.
All right. I'll try to do it from off the top of my head.
If
Well,
you'd
there you
like,
go.
even I can
NFC.
go first. If you'd like, I
In
can
the
go
NFC, in the NFC, I've got the 49ers,
first. Mm-hmm.
number 1.
Correct.
Number 2, the Detroit Lions.
Okay, I like it.
Number 3, the Philadelphia Eagles. And number 4, how about them Cowboys? Everybody else in the North is garbage.
Correct.
Everybody else in the
East.
else in the NFC East is garbage.
Correct.
And NFC South is garbage. But I actually do like. I don't know if I put them top 6, but I actually do really like Tampa Bay. Shake and bake, baby.
Yeah, you really like Baker Mayfield, if we're being honest.
Yeah, well, they've looked good, Derek. They've looked good.
And the Seahawks?
Those the Seahawks probably in the mix, and then it's a crapshoot for the sixth spot. In the AFC, ooh, that's close. I actually, ooh, I don't know if I have. I really have a lot of faith in the Ravens this year. I don't know if I put them number 1, but I really like the Ravens. Close behind them, the Dolphins. Close behind them, the Chiefs. Those are kind of my top
What about Buffalo,
three that
Bob?
I
What about Buffalo?
Buffalo right there. Yeah, Buffalo probably first, and then everybody else at this point in time, just because of the big win over Miami, or else I probably would put Miami up there. And the Ravens just lost to the Colts, if I remember correctly, which
Yeah,
was
that was a gross
kind of a
game.
blunder. It was
Yeah.
kind of a blunder, but I still like the Ravens. I still like the Ravens.
It was funny because
Um,
I was going to ask if you thought the Ravens were the worst 3-1 team in the league. Because
I
I'm
still
not sold.
like the Ravens. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I'd go probably Bills number 1, Chiefs number 2 because I just can't give up on the Chiefs. Dolphins and then Ravens.
Fair enough. What about the Chargers, Bob?
I don't buy into them at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis, how about you? Who you got?
It's pretty similar. I mean, I think right now you got to say Buffalo, Miami, and Kansas City in some sort of order. I tend to, even though they lost big to Buffalo, I tend to still think that Miami it just it could finally be their year. Um, and so I think I got to go with those three at the top. Baltimore is, the best team in the North, so we got to put them in there. And then I'll go. Man, the AFC South is kind of just
There.
it's just a mess. It's just a
there.
muddled mess.
Yeah.
All four of those teams are together for a reason. They belong together, but it's hard to differentiate. Um, if I had to take two of them, I would take the Houston Texans, I think, and the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point. But they're kind of just it's really hard to differentiate as far as that goes. And then everybody else is kind of kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. The NFC is looking much better. I mean, you've got obviously the San Francisco 49ers who've just been cruising. Philadelphia is also 4-0, but hasn't looked as good. I would still probably put them second. I'm going to go with the Detroit Football Lions third. Give me Seattle, baby. Give me the Seattle Seahawks as a strong 3-1 team at this point. I just can't root for Dallas, but they got to be up there. And then, you know what? I'll go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll go a little bacon shake to round it out. But I think as a whole, I mean, you got a
Thank you,
couple of
Dennis.
teams there in the AFC, and then everybody else is just it's kind of tough to get behind right now. I mean, I'm not getting behind the Jets or the Patriots. I'm not getting behind the Steelers or the Browns or the Bengals. The AFC South is a wash, and then I'm not buying in on the Chargers, Raiders, or Broncos. So it's more no's than yeses for me there.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the only team I would throw up there, I'm still not sold on the Buccaneers. I do think the Saints, with a healthy Derek Carr, uh, could be a force to be reckoned with, at least within the South Division. Saints always have a very strong defense. They get Alvin Kamara back, get Derek Carr back from injury, hopefully, because Jameis is an absolute nightmare. They should be 3-1 if Derek Carr doesn't get hurt against the Packers, but that's neither here nor there. Um, and yeah, then I'll never be able to give up on the Chargers. They're just the one team that if Brandon Staley wasn't their head coach, would be 3-1. But alas, Brandon Staley is their head coach, so what can you do? And then I'm just not as high on Baltimore as Bob is. A lot of injuries there, and for whatever reason, it just feels like their offense just does not impress me. But they somehow always find a way to get it done. They always find a way to get it done. But definitely my top two teams.
Weak division.
Is currently
Weak division, Derek.
currently a weak division.
Very weak division.
Maybe the Bengals can make some noise in there. We'll see. It remains to be seen. But definitely my Super Bowl, if the season ended today, it'd have to be 49ers Bills, but I would love for the Lions. I mean, how cool would that be? Lions Bills, that'd be a heck of a Super Bowl. Get some revenge for
Nearly
the
beat 'em last
Thanksgiving
year.
game.
Where we were screwed.
We were indeed screwed. We were indeed
We
screwed.
were screwed.
that could probably do it for NFL talk. Normally, in a week where we've done regular podcasts, we would preview the games rather than recap the first entire quarter of the season up to this point. But what can you do? Perhaps while we're discussing some MLB baseball stuff, playoffs, I'll make sure I give us our weekly tradition of the Derek Rezio game of the week. But we'll get into the playoffs. Dennis, I'll start with you. I don't know how much, Bob, you paid attention. Dennis, the entire first round of the playoffs ended in sweeps.
It
The
did.
Phillies 2-0 sweep the Marlins. The Diamondbacks 2-0 sweep the Brewers. The Minnesota Twins 2-0 sweep the Blue Jays. And the Texas Rangers 2-0 sweep the Tampa Bay Rays. A lot of road dogs. Nah, I guess it was split. 2 road dogs get
It
it
was 2 and
done.
2. Yeah.
2 home champions get it done. And the
Derek is
AL East is already almost dead, and we've only gone through one playoff round.
is Texas even a was Texas even a road dog with only 19,000 fans in the stands?
That is
I
a
mean,
good point.
that's my question.
That is a strong point. The MLB did not do the Tampa Bay Rays any favors, a team that already struggles with low attendance, by giving them the 3 p.m. Eastern slot for the playoffs. That was cruel and unusual punishment. The Rays did not deserve that.
I think it's just, we got to sacrifice somebody, so we might as well sacrifice the team that's already not going to have half of its stadium full. So, you might as well just sacrifice them. I think it makes total sense rather than wiping two of them out.
Fair enough, Dennis. Fair enough. I actually, to be quite honest, haven't watched a ton of the playoff baseball action up to this point. Caught the box scores, was pretty much it, just because I was still in a sour mood over the way the Cubs season ended.
Right.
But one thing I know is for certain, I'll be rooting for the Diamondbacks. I'll be rooting for the Orioles. I'll also be rooting for the Rangers. That's also been one of my, you know, AL teams. So those will be my teams moving forward. An Orioles D-backs World Series would be sick. A Rangers D-backs series would give me the best of both worlds. Uh, but ultimately, as of this point, I think the Dodgers and the Braves have got to be the top two teams in the NL, Dennis. And the AL to me seems to be wide open. Obviously, Houston has the championship pedigree, the experience. Baltimore, not really any playoff experience, certainly no World Series deep playoff run experience. This Rangers group, Corey Seager has previous playoff experience, but the rest of the group, not really. The Minnesota Twins got there last year, and congratulations to the Minnesota Twins for breaking the entire state of Minnesota's, or no, not the entire state of Minnesota's, but the Minnesota Twins' previous 19 straight playoff losses, Dennis.
Right.
An absolutely incredible statistic. So congratulations for the Twins for snapping that. Not only winning a game but moving on. But they have a little bit of playoff experience, even though they were swept last year. And then, of course, uh, did I cover everyone? Yeah, I covered everyone there. So yeah,
Yep.
pretty much the only team in the AL with significant playoff experience is the Astros. Meanwhile, the NL, the Braves, Dodgers, and Phillies all with pretty significant previous playoff experience. So, you know, how do you see that shaking out? And if you'd like to at some point digress into the way the Red season ended, you're more than welcome to.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think I need to maybe just, move on from that, but eh, I'll be paying close attention to these playoff matchups. This divisional round starting on Saturday. I mean, obviously, as you pointed out, clean sweep across the board. I did watch several of the games on Tuesday night. Did not get the chance to watch um any last night, so just caught some highlights. But man, and I know that this will spark some discussion probably, but I can't help but have to mention it. The Phillies look pretty darn good. I mean, I know it was 2 games against arguably the worst team in the field, but they dominated. And the home environment there at Citizens Bank, at the bank,
The
can't
freaking
be played with.
bank. The
Can't be played
freaking
with.
bank.
At the bank. It was rocking. And I hate to bring it up, but as somebody who's experienced an environment at the bank in the playoffs, I can tell you firsthand, it ain't no joke. So it's going to be tough. Obviously, they're not going to have that home field advantage um, moving forward from this point. But when they do get to play in Philly, that's going to be a massive swing in their favor. All these teams. I'm really intrigued by all these matchups. I mean, you get the NL West matchup with the Dodgers and the D-backs, which is actually going to be really fun. I think. I hope that the D-backs can give them a run for their money because I just cannot stand the Los Angeles Dodgers, man. I'm with you this week. Obviously, based on my comments, I'm pulling for Philly over the Braves. Although the Atlanta Braves has just been
A
so good this
wagon.
year.
Absolute wagon.
It's absolutely unbelievable. So it's going to be a tough road. Um,
Very
you know,
interesting that the NL playoffs, NL East versus NL East, NL West versus NL West.
right.
I'd be curious to look up when the last time that has happened.
I kind of love that. I know that the playoffs, all the teams that get to that point are good and it makes for intriguing matchups. But when you have a divisional game at this point in the playoffs, a divisional series, it just makes it all that more intriguing, and all that more fun to watch. Over in the AL, I think you said it perfectly. These teams are pretty evenly matched. I'm sort of rooting for the underdogs in the NL, but they are, I think, reasonably considered underdogs by most people. The AL, Houston snags that bye, but had to narrowly beat out the Rangers and the Mariners for the division on the last 2 days of the season. And so it's not like we're dealing with a powerhouse here. And then Baltimore had a lot of success, won a lot of games this year, but also, as you mentioned, a young team without that, playoff experience. And so who knows what happens over the course of a 5 or 7 game series. I think if I had to go with a team out of the AL, I'm probably going Baltimore, but I also like the Rangers.
I love the Rangers.
I think the Rangers just have a few more of those players to rally around, with a little bit more of experience. You mentioned Corey Seager, and so that gives me a little more confidence in them. But man, it should be fun. It should be fun. As far as the Reds go, it was disappointing. We didn't crumble, but we just didn't get it done. Um, there's a couple of games in there. The inexcusable 9-run lead against the Pittsburgh Pirates, blowing that's just inexcusable. We also lost a game against the Minnesota Twins that Hunter Green was absolutely dealing nearly through a shutout, and we managed to lose. So there's just some games in there that you'd really love to have back, as is the case every single year. But really, the outlook for me has been focused now to next year, and it's really good. Um, I'm sure we'll touch on it more in the offseason, but Mike Moustakas off the payroll, Joey Votto hopefully coming back on a much cheaper contract off the payroll, Will Myers off the payroll. So we have some freedom this offseason to finally maybe sign some pitching and pair that with a lot of the young talent that is obviously under team control. Going in next year, there's a lot of optimism, but I'll reserve some more thoughts on that for the winter and the spring.
Ken Griffey Jr. still on the payroll?
I think one more year of Ken Griffey Jr., but that we don't talk about that.
Yeah, I won't say too much about the Cubs. I rode the emotional roller coaster with that team almost all the way through to the end. I finally wisened up and admitted defeat on the right after the Braves finished their sweep of us. So that would have been what, Wednesday. That Wednesday, I finally admitted defeat, and for games 160, 161, and 162, was finally able to emotionally detach myself from the outcome of the game. But yeah, really
Right.
frustrating, disappointing end to the season. A lot of games, as you said, here and there that if you would have won that one, would have won this one, you would have been in the playoffs instead of the Marlins, but you weren't. That's why It takes me back to the very beginning of the season and all the games that I felt David Ross seemingly threw away with poor managerial decision making, and feeling in those moments that those games were going to come back to bite us, and they most certainly did. They most certainly did. And unfortunately for me, um, Jed Hoyer and whatever first name bozo Tom Ricketts, I think is our owner, uh, expressed their full faith and confidence in David Ross. So I'm screwed. I'm screwed. Uh, there is absolutely not going to be a firing of David Ross this offseason, which is terrible. But ultimately, if the Cubs would not have wasted so many plate appearances on the likes of Eric Hosmer and Tucker Barnhart and Trey Mancini and Patrick Wisdom early on in the season, uh, perhaps things could have gone differently. Perhaps if Michael Fulmer, they realized early on in the season that he was cooked and a closer role, could have been a different season. Drew Smiley, if they would have moved him to the bullpen sooner, maybe have a different season. A lot of different things. As with each of the other, 18 teams in the MLB that missed the playoffs, where things could have gone differently, but they didn't. So looking forward to next year. Gonna have a lot of decisions to make. Does Cody Bellinger re-sign? Do the Cubs, attack free agency for Shohei? Do they attack the trade market for Juan Soto or Pete Alonso? We don't know, and I won't get my hopes up just yet. We'll wait until the hot stove starts warming up a little bit. But the last thing I wanted to mention before we kick it over to Bob to see if he has any thoughts on the playoffs. If I want to, I can attend the Dodgers Diamondbacks game next Thursday for $67.
Oh, baby. Oh, I kind of feel like you almost have to.
I'm considering. I have to pick Ashley up from the
Playoff
airport
baseball.
on Thursday. I have to pick Ashley up from the airport on Thursday, so depending on the timing of that, I very well, if they play the early afternoon game, I could take the day off work, because why the heck not? Go down, watch the game, pick Ashley up from the airport afterwards. So we'll see. We shall see. Bob, any thoughts on the MLB playoffs, or perhaps, uh, you know, the end to the fantasy baseball season for your squad?
Yeah, I actually had a chance to watch quite a few of the games.
Awesome, awesome.
And, and very impressed by the Texas Rangers. I like their chances quite a bit. Nathan Eovaldi pitched very, very well yesterday in what was kind of expected to not be a great start for him, given the fact that he'd been hurt recently and the Rangers' rotation is in shambles. Um, but the team that I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the team that impressed me the most, um, or was the most fun to watch for me out of all of these teams, was the Minnesota Twins. The games that they played against the Blue Jays were a lot of fun to watch, and their stadium was rocking. They had the fans showed out very, very well for Minnesota, and Pablo Lopez looks just about unhittable. Um, he mowed down that Blue Jays lineup with relative ease. Um, and so did Dennis's man, Sonny Gray. Sonny
That's right.
Gray
He did. He looked great.
mowed through the lineup as well. I mean, John Schneider not doing himself any favors with his fan base for yanking, was it Jose Barrios there after allowing one walk in the entire game, basically. But that was a fun game to watch. 2-0 game. Royce Lewis, obviously, with the big hit in the first game. Um, I'm really excited for that series against Houston. I think the Twins Houston series will be better than people are giving it credit for. I really, really like the D-backs as well. Um, I think that if they get clicking on all cylinders, they're a very, 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 very hard team to beat. Their lineup has proven to be very dangerous and deep at points of the season, and they've got two true number 1, 2 guys Um, and they pitched one of their like somebody like that was pretty much a no-name guy in the first game of the series, I think.
The D-backs?
And that worked out. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that worked
Brandon
out for him.
Pfaadt.
So yeah, so it worked out for him. So they should have somebody to go for game one of their better guys for Kelly or Gallen or whoever they didn't pitch for game one of this next series. I want to buy into the Orioles. I do. I think they're a fun team. And their pitching really has been improved in the second half of the season. A lot of these guys are not pretty names, but they have pitched pretty well.
Kyle Bradish, fantasy workhorse.
I'm just not like totally sold on them. I don't know what it is. Like I have no reason to be. They've proven that they can win on every turn, but I don't know. Playoff baseball just I'm assuming it's a little bit different. So we'll see how they're what they're made of. I think that the Dodgers. I have little to no faith in the Dodgers. I think the Arizona has a very winnable series there.
Are the Dodgers paper tigers, Bob?
They do.
I do. I think so. I really do. Their rotation is not that good.
They're relying which is insane how they won 100 games with that rotation.
The only guy that can really rely on is Clayton Kershaw, but even he's dicey. Obviously historically in October.
Lance
and are you really trying to rely? Are you really trying to rely on Lance Lynn and Pepio and
Bobby Miller?
Emmett Sheehan, like
don't forget Bobby Miller. Bob, what happened to Julio Urias? What happened to Julio Urias?
Never gonna play again, probably.
Him and Wander Franco both. Yeah, Bob, I'm glad you had a chance to watch some really good, high-quality playoff baseball. And I think you're right about the Minnesota Twins. They have...
By the way, one last thing, Derek.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Twins have a very good starting rotation and pitching wins in the playoffs.
By the way, the Milwaukee Brewers are Garbaggio and good riddance.
Thank you.
Had no business being there. What were the Cubs and Reds doing? That's all I got to say. How are you getting outclassed by this? I have no idea. Get your money up, not your funny up.
Fair point. Yeah, Corbin Burns, see ya. Brandon Woodruff got hurt before this regular season ended, so he was out. And Freddie Peralta, see ya. Dennis knows all about the Freddie Peralta train.
Oh, yeah.
Loose cannon, live arm, Dennis. Yeah, Dennis is a live arm addict. He's a live arm addict over there.
You can't get away from him.
Yeah, really the biggest...
Chris Bassett, Freddie Peralta, Live Arm Incorporated.
Aaron Nola.
Remember when I picked up Hyun-Jin Ryu?
Oh, classic. Classic.
An old Bobby retread.
Speaking of the Blue Jays, for whatever reason, Rob Schneider sort of had his Kevin Cash moment, pulling Jose Barrios at 47 pitches of shutout baseball. That was probably the wildest thing to happen so far in the early slate. The Blue Jays were just an absolute mess. Vladdy getting picked off at second, multiple bases loaded, inning-ending double plays. Just absolutely brutal for the Toronto Blue Jays. Bob, I see you unmuting.
Yeah, I was watching that game literally when that happened. I was like, Jose Barrios literally Shovey Incorporated. The one walk that he allowed in that inning, it was like a 10-pitch at bat. It was like a battle. Like the guy was just fighting off everything. Like he was pitching relatively well. I mean, he wasn't like he lost like command, and they're like concerned that he can't find the zone. And okay, we'll bring in Yuri or whatever the guy's name is that they ended up bringing in. The what is it, the Japanese pitcher or Kirikiche or something like that.
Oh, but, yeah. Shoot, who was it? Yusei Kikuchi.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. I totally botched that, but I knew I could picture his face. I can picture his face.
I kept thinking Kenta Maeda, and I'm like, no, he's on the Twins. Who's the other one? Because Kikuchi Kenta was throwing me off. But yes,
Yeah,
you say
Kikuchi gets
Kikuchi.
brought in, and of course, we know him as a starter, but they had him. The idea was to bring him in and long relief, to kind of take over. But he talking about a failure to locate. I mean, an absolute failure to locate, and then just all of a sudden, Carlos Correa, of course, comes up, bases loaded. Carlos Correa comes up for the Twins, and just a slapper into the uh, left center gap, gets through, past the second baseman there, and disaster strikes. And the camera just kept cutting to Schneider the entire time, looking like he'd seen a ghost.
Some great
Disaster,
camera work there.
Disaster City.
Disaster City, indeed. You know what else is Disaster City as we move on from MLB to the college football world before we start to wrap it up? The UC Bearcats. Dennis, what has happened? What has happened? I made fun of UC having none other than former University of Florida trash can, garbage can, Emory Jones as the starting quarterback. Dennis, you found a way to lose to Miami of Ohio. And that sort of signaled the beginning of things troubling. You held strong with Oklahoma, but then fell to BYU on the road. You're 2-3. Is bowl eligibility a possibility for this UC Bearcats team? Because if I remember correctly, Dennis, you did not have in our preseason preview the Bearcats starting 2-3.
I don't know. I think I probably had him starting 3-2. I mean, I think it was. I think the game that obviously we should have won would have been the Miami game, but I think that I might have. I definitely gave the edge to Oklahoma. I would assume that I gave it to BYU.
I don't know if you
Um,
gave it to BYU, Dennis. You had a streak of
all right. Well,
BYU, Iowa State, Baylor, and I think you were feeling yourself a little bit.
no, that's fine. We knew this was going to be tough. Obviously the Miami game is a game that you just quite simply can't lose, and maybe it was a little bit. I mean, in that particular case, I think it was an oversight. It was a look ahead game. Obviously, they had Oklahoma after that. They came off of an absolute beat down of Eastern Kentucky as you would expect, and then playing a really good game and getting the W against Pitt, and you feel pretty good. You come in, okay, well, we just got to get this win. Against Miami, they're not going to put up any problems,
I
and
mean,
then
I
what
mean,
do you know? The Red Hawks got you,
I mean,
the
Blaine
MAC.
Gabbert's
So
brother, Dennis. Blaine Gabbert's brother
right,
sunk ya.
right. There's no excuses. There's no excuses. It was just an ugly
Oh
loss.
my
And
gosh,
then
Dennis!
last week,
Are you kidding me, Dennis? Dennis, I
I
think it's
I told you that. I mean,
folks.
yes. Did I predict bowl eligibility? Did I predict 7-5? Yes. But all that stuff being said, I told you that we were absolutely screwed without Luke Fickle and with Scott Satterfield at the helm, and without uh um. Well, ever since Desmond really left, it's been a slow trend downward, if we're being honest. So for the last 2 years, but it's it is what it is with this team. Um, and that's just the unfortunate part about it. It's going to be some growing pains in the Big 12. I've seen some glimpses. I've seen some glimpses. I also note, I believe it was Ivan Pace who didn't play last week at BYU. That's a big deal. He's a big anchor on that defense. Um, a future NFL defensive player for sure. And not having him out there is definitely part of the reason that we weren't able to get it done last week.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Bob, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say, number one, I mean, I think Derek's preseason prediction of Colorado becoming bowl eligible is looking a lot better at this point than Cincy becoming bowl eligible.
Well, better, but let's take a look at the
No,
last couple of weeks. Let's take a look at
that
the
I
last
never
couple of
I
weeks.
never chalked up USC
lost,
as a
lost a
win,
good.
and I never
Lost,
chalked up Oregon as a win. Never chalked those up as wins.
but
Right. But
Dennis is, or both of you, is that Cincinnati may be down, but there's only one team out of the three that is down 6 feet under, and that would be none other than
it's
my
true.
Spartans. I think Derek will appreciate this lead in on the topic from MSU. Um, I made a lot of noise on this show about Dwayne Casey.
You did.
If the original and Dwayne Casey, what did I say about Dwayne Casey?
He
If you
was
look on
there.
the sideline,
He was there, Bob, to wear the St. Jude's patch and stand as a statue.
correct. He was there to wear St. Jude's patch, stand like a statue with literally zero emotion or care in the world. Well, I hate to say it, folks, but we've actually found a coach that's worse than Dwayne Casey when it comes to doing that very thing, and that would be none other than Michigan State head coach Harlan Barnett. If taking the time to tune into any Michigan State games in recent weeks, the man looked like he's seen a ghost on the sideline. He looks like a complete deer in the headlights. Has no idea what's going on. As Michigan State is just getting stomped on by competition. Next week we have a bye week this week. Next week we're gonna go to Piscataway to play Greg Schiano and Rutgers, and our bowl eligibility is going to be ended. Our chances at bowl eligibility is going to be ended next week. You heard it here first from me by Greg Schiano and Rutgers. Because guess what? If we lose against Rutgers next week, given our remaining schedule, we're not gonna we're like in the games that we could potentially win in that remaining schedule. We have no chance of bowl eligibility. Harlan Barnett is not the answer. We need we're in the dark ages. We're probably still gonna have to play Mel Tucker anyway because you know lawsuits work like that. What are we doing?
Bob,
What are we doing?
Bob, two things. You beat my lead in to the talk on Michigan State. I wanted, to lead in with, speaking of teams in the dumpster, Mel Tucker's Michigan State Spartans, who he's no longer the coach of, yada, yada, yada. But then, Bob. I just saw a report that said none other than Katon Hauser is going to be the starting quarterback for Rutgers. Does that in any way,
Thank
shape, or form
God. Thank God.
revitalize your hopes in Michigan State football beating
Yes.
Rutgers and Greg Schiano?
Yes, Derek, it does because Noah Kim, folks, I hate to say it,
He's not the
you
savior.
know, was not the savior. Kim Sanity was short. Holy wow!
Bob, Michigan State fans were telling me after the game against Central Michigan he was a Heisman contender. They were calling it Heis Kim.
I don't know, Derek. I don't know where you're seeing these
Lunatics.
fans. I have no idea. I mean, the only like dread of like the only like shred of interesting thing about this team that's not even a real thing that I've had to hold on to is all this rumor about Urban Meyer potentially returning to coach this team, which is never going to happen. But
Correct.
it's just like fun to see it go across Twitter, and then people get triggered about it.
Yeah, it's entertaining to dream. I won't stop you from dreaming, Bob.
Correct. And but here's my thing: if we're gonna be arse, let's at least be arse with somebody that's like a freshman, sophomore quarterback out there, cutting his chops on,
Correct.
let's just get him some experience. I mean, if he's garbage, he's garbage. But you know what? He's all we got. So at least give him a chance to go out there, get game experience, learn against real competition. He's gonna have a chance against Greg Schiano and Rutgers, which they're better than us. But you know what? It's Rutgers, so we at least like feasibly maybe have a chance if we can put things together. I mean, last week we didn't win, but we did look drastically better than we did the week previous, which does say something. There are some things to be positive about. The defense hasn't looked too bad. Our kicker is drastically better than it was last year. However,
Jonathan Kim MVP.
yeah, correct. 58-yard field goal, by the way.
Correct.
Jake Moody could never. But
I'm pretty sure Jake Moody did.
But the fact that Keaton Hauser is now in, and we don't have three interception guaranteed Noah Kim starting out there. I mean, Derek, I was last thing on this. I was literally getting to the point where I was nearly on the verge of barfing because every time Noah Kim stepped on the field, they'd be like, he just threw another interception. Oh, this guy, Noah Kim is never phased. The coaches talk about how he's just never phased by anything. He's just steadfast and confident. Well, he was confidently delivering picks to the other team. So let's cut the bull. Let's get another option in there. It's time for Caden Hauser. Give him sanity. You're done. Oh, at least we know that Peyton Thorne in your side, Thorne, isn't doing a whole lot better because he was getting benched and then got back out there and then threw another game losing interception.
Yeah,
So
choked against Georgia.
at least we're not looking at Auburn and saying, "Oh man, what could have been if we just had Peyton Thorne still on the team?" Probably still would be better than what we have, but at the same time, not a world beater. So thank the good Lord.
Correct. Yeah. You've still got Indiana, Bob. You've still got Nebraska, and you've still got Minnesota.
I'm worried, Derek. I'm worried and I'm concerned. Last,
It's
when
been a
we
while,
couldn't
Bob.
beat
Go ahead, Bob. It's been a while.
when we couldn't beat the Iowa backup quarterback, Derek. Because of course, Cade McNamara, he didn't want the smoke. He got out of there early. Um, let's just say this: the fact that Harlan Barnett's still the interim coach of this team, I mean, should just be freaking canned immediately. This guy has no idea what's going on at all.
Bob,
He looks like, I mean, Derek,
what is Mark
do I need to
D'Antonio? What is Mark D'Antonio doing other than looking sad on the sidelines, Bob? That's
correct,
all.
Derek?
That's all I ever see is Mark D'Antonio. Not even a headset, just standing there looking off into the distance, very sad.
Derek, I can't even. You know what? I'm not even going to blame Mark Antonio because you know what? Mark Antonio had nothing to do. Should have had
I'm not
nothing.
for the record, I'm not blaming Mark. I'm just wondering what the point of even having him on the staff is if he doesn't even have a headset and all he's doing is looking so sad on the sidelines.
Well, there's a lot to look sad about. Let me tell you. But number two, the there's no reason to have him on the sideline, Derek, because there's just no passion. There's just no emotion there. I told my mother the other day we'd be lucky if we could hire Jim McElwain to take over this job. This is ridiculous. I mean, Harlan Barnett is not the answer, and it's just nothing pains me more than seeing an absolute lack of emotion on the sideline. Because you know what, these are young men you're leading. You got to have some passion. You know,
Correct.
they've been through the ringer. We need some leadership. We need somebody that's going to say, you know what, dang it, let's. You know what, we may be in a tough spot, but we're going to meet you on your doorstep, like Dan Campbell said. We're going to meet you on your doorstep, and we're going to do everything we can. We're shorthanded, we're undermanned, we're outgunned, but you know what?
Bob,
We're not ducking them.
you just got to keep chopping. Is what I heard. Just keep chopping.
You just got to keep chopping, Eric. You just got to keep chopping. Mel Tugger, you know, for all he did, it was at least a good motto, and we did win that motto fair and square, by the way.
It's up for grabs again this year, Bob.
Oh well, it's gonna be rescinded.
Bob,
And
what
nothing
about
pains me more than the fake Sparty, the mascot for freaking Rutgers.
Bob, is the woodshed in the deep end dead?
Derek, we've just drowned in the deep end.
Oh no. Not drowning in your own deep end. You hate to see it. Where was the lifeguard when you needed him? The lone Spartan standing at the top of the student section. You needed him to save you from the deep end.
More emotion on his blank face than I've seen at Harlan Barnett.
Very true. And then last but not least, we can get into Michigan a little bit. Like I mentioned, Peyton Thorne absolutely choking down the stretch against Georgia prevented Michigan from being the number one team in the AP for the first time in my lifetime. AKA since 1997 was the last time Michigan held the number one ranking in the AP poll, so I will have to wait yet another week. But so far, so good. The new clock rules. Dennis, I know you had strong opinions on the baseball clock rules. Are your opinions on the college football clock rules just as strong?
No, not just given the fact that I don't know. I guess just overall baseball probably means a little more to me. That's
Fair
probably
enough.
why.
Fair enough. But yeah, with the clock rules, no longer an automatic stop the clock after any first down, has sped up games significantly and added significantly more advertisements into the game, which is a crying shame and an absolute farce. But with that being said, Michigan is running less plays than they were last year. They were sort of discombobulated to start the season, even though they won every game by 20 plus points and held every single team under like 7 points. A little discombobulated to start the season, not running as many plays, not scoring as many points, but they just get the job done. They get the job done. They got the job done against Nebraska, dropped a fat, clean, easy, stress-free 40 bomb on the Huskers, took care of Rutgers rather handily, a team that has in the past given us numerous problems, and we just keep trucking. JJ looks strong. Blake is starting to slowly but surely gain his confidence after the, knee injury last year. He's starting to trust himself more with each and every week. Donovan Edwards, a slow start after proclaiming himself to eventually one day be named among the greats with Barry Sanders and, Emmett Smith and Walter Payton. He's a bit of a far cry away from that at this point in time, but he's coming off a significant knee injury as well, and you can tell he's not quite trusting his instinct, trusting his body at this point. So I imagine as we continue to ramp up the season towards Penn State, towards Maryland, towards Ohio State, those things will change. But Bob, uh, Michigan and Michigan State will square off 2 weeks from this Saturday, October 21st, in East Landfill. Is there any hope for the Spartans?
Derek, there's absolutely hope because I got one thing to say and one thing only. If Rocky Lombardi can get it done, anybody can get it done. And darn it, we're gonna. What kind of fan would I be? Even if it's freaking Harlan Barnett, I
You're
don't
right,
I
Bob.
don't give a rat's behind, Derek. Hayden Hauser, Noah Kim,
Gotta
the
have the
man,
faith.
the man from the top row of the stadium. I don't give a bleep. We're gonna get it done, and we need to get it done because in order to get bill eligibility, we're gonna need to have it, baby.
Yeah, it's shoot, what was I gonna say? I completely drew a blank. I can't remember if it had something to do with Michigan State or not. Um,
Mind you, it is an uphill battle for sure. Um, but who would I be if I didn't have the faith? You got to keep the faith, Dennis.
That's absolutely right.
I've completely lost what I was gonna say. I like to think, knowing myself, it was something very wise and, intellectual. But completely lost it. Completely lost it. I have no idea what happened to it. But yeah, last thing, uh, U of A football, very competitive with Washington last week. Uh, Simply put, they're just not as talented as Washington, and you can see that, 11 on 11. But they were competitive, uh, kept it, within 10 points throughout the majority of the game. And this week facing USC, 23.5 point spread at this point in time, I believe, could have changed. As I mentioned in the group chat earlier today, humpback whale play, U of A to cover. There is absolutely zero chance they get blown out by over 20. They didn't get beat by that much last year, and that was with the worst team. I am very confident that U of A covers that spread, so just a little nugget there. Um, but yeah, Ohio State beat Notre Dame in probably, one of the bigger games of the earlier season. I'm still not impressed with Ohio State. I feel exactly the same way I did about them last year when we beat them by 20. Um, yeah, there's just something about them where the Ohio State teams that I grew up that terrorized me when I grew up were just athletes everywhere, especially on the D line. Going from Bosa to Bosa and then Chase Young, not to mention guys like AJ Hawk terrorizing me, James Laurinaitis terrorizing me, Denzel Ward, Jeff Okuda, um, the Malcolm Jenkins. The list goes on and on and on. Defensively and offensively, they don't really have an elite running back like they used to. All the other Ohio State teams that terrorized me, Curtis Samuel coming out of the backfield, Ezekiel Elliott, J.K. Dobbins, they always manage to pair an elite running back with a above average to elite quarterback. Kyle McCord, it was an impressive fourth, game-winning drive. I'll give him that, but it doesn't really feel like Ohio State is that much of a threat on the run, um, as I think they need to be to really give Michigan too much of a scare. So at this point in time, I'm not really worried about anyone in the Big Ten threatening to topple Michigan from the throne of Big Ten, two-time Big Ten champions. But it remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. We'll take each and every week as it comes, and just continue grinding. Continue grinding. Dennis, you have any thoughts on Ohio State?
No, no, I got nothing. You covered it well.
Bob, any thoughts on Ohio State? Texas, USC, Colorado,
Hook 'em, baby. Hook 'em.
Bama. Is Bama Dennis,
Roll Tide.
is Bama a little vulnerable this year?
Yeah, no, it seems like they are. It seems like they don't quite have the whole quarterback situation figured out. I mean, I don't know. Did they have a game last week or were
They
they
did. They
off
they
last
went
week?
they went on the road and beat Ole Miss, I think. I think it was on the
Beat Ole
road.
Miss. Okay, because I think it was 2 weeks ago that there was quite a bit of swapping around at the quarterback position. I don't know. It seems like
They're
they
sticking with
just don't quite
Milrow,
have. Okay, they're gonna stick with him. So eh,
but he's not the
I don't know.
Alabama quarterbacks we're used to.
That's right. That's right. And it doesn't seem like it's quite the Alabama team we're used to. Um, yeah, that's all you can say.
Feels like college football is wide open this year. Georgia doesn't
It
look that
does. It
dominant.
truly does.
Michigan, I think, is dominant, but that's bias of playing a bunch of soft teams. But Oregon's an impressive team. Washington's an impressive team. Texas, at least up to this point, has been an impressive team. Feels like we're going to see a lot of very nice color matchups in the last year of the traditional college football playoff format.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's fun, but also a bit ironic that the Pac-12 seems to be balling out a bit this year. I
They'll
mean,
beat
obviously
themselves up as
the
they always do eventually, but yes, they
right, right,
they
right.
picked they
It'll
picked a
even
heck
out,
of a
but
they picked a heck of a year to have Washington State be really good, Oregon State be really good, to go with Washington, Oregon, USC, and Colorado is a story, but they're overhyped and a 6-win team at best, and UCLA also in the mix. Yeah, very. It is ironic, Dennis, indeed.
the Conference of Champions.
Con-
Send Bill Walton out on a high note.
Correct. Conference of Champions, long live. Long live the Conference of Champions. That'll pretty much wrap it up for us. I don't know. I don't really have a right bench baller prepared for this week. I don't know if you guys do. Um,
I scrambled. I got one, but I scrambled.
I do not.
all right, Dennis, go ahead and give us your right bench baller. Why not? I don't really have one.
I mean, this is a little bit overdue here. It's a couple weeks in the making, but I know you guys will know what I'm talking about. I'm going with Devon Achane, running back from the Miami Dolphins. Did absolutely nothing. Rookie came back from I can't remember. I think it was a knee injury, some sort of knee injury. First couple weeks, touched the ball twice, and then week 3 against Denver, 203 yards on the ground, 30 yards through the air, and 4 overall touchdowns. Follow that up last week at Buffalo with another 120 combined yards and 2 more touchdowns. Uh, just absolutely, you know, 0 to 100 as far as it goes in this league. And, hopefully he can sustain that success. But, coming in behind Jeff Wilson, who got hurt, obviously, coming in behind Raheem Mostert. But finally getting the touches and doing a lot with it. Just another one of those speedsters to add to the Miami Dolphins offense, which is a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I guess my right bench baller of the season so far would be Puka Nakua. Dude's
There you
been
go.
really good for the LA Rams. Had some injury issues at BYU that he didn't really reach his full potential there. Had some injury issues with the Rams as well. But in the absence of Cooper Cup, has become an extremely reliable target and a very fun name to say. So yeah, I'll just ride with Puka Nakua for this point up to this season. And a bonus right bench baller for Bob since he doesn't have one. I'll give it to Jerome Ford, who has stepped up in Nick Chubb's, very unfortunate, gruesome season-ending knee injury.
Oh, yeah.
That was tough. That was tough. Winners and losers. I don't know if either of you have any, but I have a couple.
I've thought of a couple as well. I have one of each.
I, Dennis, let's start with your loser because I hope you're thinking the same way I am.
I think we might be on the same page with this one, Derek. Put a lot of thought into this. Loser would be the United States Ryder Cup team. Absolute disaster in Rome last weekend, and I hope that people had the chance to tune into it because it was some great stuff. I mean, the Ryder Cup every 2 years is an absolutely incredible event. Must watch golf. I mean, right up there with honestly right up there with the Masters and the U.S. Open and all of the majors. Maybe even more entertaining than some of the majors, just because you get this team style event. You bring in the nationality and patriotism aspect, and it's just a lot of fun to watch.
Correct.
I was tuning in as soon as the broadcast started at 1:30 a.m., watching a couple hours, recording the rest, firing it back up when I woke up in the morning. So it was good stuff. But the United States team came out completely flat. Um, Absolutely got nothing out of Scotty Scheffler. Got very little out of the rest of the squad. Jordan Spieth and JT hung in there a little bit. Spieth looked horrible. Ironically, Justin Thomas was carrying that group most of the time, and everything kind of fell on his shoulders. And on the other side, I mean, you just got to hand it to the likes of Rory McIlroy, who nearly went 5-0 clean sweep in points, which is just incredible. John Rahm, unbelievably good.
Victor
Victor
Hovland.
Hovland played well. They just played well all the way up and down the lineup, quite frankly, and the U.S. did not. They came out and they were just not prepared to play once again on European soil. You had some of the disaster there with Patrick Cantley and the hat thing going on.
It was very
That
entertaining
obviously
to say
wasn't
the
their fault, but
least.
it was, and I don't think there was any sort of camaraderie issues. I don't think it was that. I just quite simply think that they were the worst team, and also that the Europeans set up that golf course intentionally to screw them over, which they did successfully, and hats off to them for that. They had that advantage and they played it perfectly. So
That's been what,
you know,
30 odd some years since a away Ryder Cup team has won? Hasn't it just kept alternating every 2 years for like the past 30 years?
right? Yeah, it's been 30 because it was 1990. I can't remember what 1990 something last time the U.S. won on European soil. So yeah, I mean, what's that make it? The last like 7 or 8 Ryder Cups have just been won by the home team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was entertaining. I mean, how about British Colonel Sanders or European Colonel Sanders? I can't assume his nationality, but European Colonel Sanders jumping into the pond on 16, Dennis.
Oh my
That
gosh,
was
classic moment.
legendary,
Did you
legendary
see the
moment.
Bob Menery commentary on that one
I did not.
was fantastic. Yeah, the Bob Menery commentary is good.
I'll have to check it out. But yeah, the Ryder Cup. Yeah, frankly, like you said, Dennis, I didn't really think the U.S. had much of a shot going in. For whatever
Right.
reason, just looking at the European lineup, it just felt like they had the better players. And unfortunately for Zach Johnson, the captain's picks were absolutely brutal this weekend from a points perspective. I don't remember what the exact points scoring was for the captain's picks combined, but I know it was ugly. So yeah, really, real tough scenes for the U.S. Ryder Cup team. My loser of the week was also the Ryder Cup team, but also loyalty is my loser of the week because Bob, I'm sure you can chime in on this. Damian Lillard has been traded from the Portland
Fun. You stole
Trailblazers.
mine. You stole
Oh
mine, Derek.
no, I'm sorry,
I was gonna
Bob.
go with the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat is the loser of the week.
Yeah, I mean, two peas in a pod right there. Damian Lillard. Not only does he now have to move to Milwaukee, but then he immediately divorced his wife. Just tough scenes all around. Loyalty appears to be dead, and then Drew Holiday gets traded around the farm, and his wife.
Derek, I want to finish my career as a Buck. Quote from Drew Holiday.
Correct, correct.
Promptly and immediately shipped.
Prompt and immediately shipped to Portland, and then prompt and immediately shipped again to Boston. Just, yeah, absolute wild scenes in the NBA. And like you mentioned, Bob, and you can feel free to extrapolate on it. Losers, Tyler Hero and the Miami Heat.
Yeah, emo Jimmy not happy about what went down, Derek. The Miami
What
Heat.
was that? What was that? Can I get a comment from somebody on that?
I'll comment, and Bob, you can also comment. The comment is Jimmy Butler loves to screw around on NBA media days. Last year, he came out rocking those ridiculous-looking dreadlock extensions.
Oh my
I think he
gosh.
just likes to make a mockery of NBA media days and force them to use a goofy-looking picture of him in promo materials and the NBA headshot and all those types of things. That's what I think it comes down to.
All right, all right, all right. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Bob,
All right.
any further comment on that?
I mean, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, the Miami Heat. Not only do you not improve, but your two biggest rivals, the Bucks and the Celtics, both get better. So you're currently in shambles.
I'll ask you this, Bob. I think Portland came out really well in that deal. Multiple first round picks. Say what you want about DeAndre Ayton, um, but I thought they did pretty well for themselves in their eventual return for Damian Lillard.
I thought they came out even better on the Drew Holiday deal than they did on the Damian Lillard
I
deal. To
think
be
you got a
quite
point.
honest with you, so
Yeah.
so I mean, but overall, considering the whole package, if you take what they got for Drew Holiday, pretty darn good.
Yeah.
No complaints from my side.
Yeah, definitely. Dennis, swing it back to you for your winner.
Yeah, this is going to be an odd one, and with the clarification that I'm talking about very short-term things here. But for the last couple of days, I'm actually going to go with the Chicago Bears. They get a big win, finally get on the board tonight against the Washington Commanders. Looked really good. Justin Fields has played well, and mostly a winner for getting rid of the toxic Chase Claypool. So, a former Steeler off the I don't even know. I don't know what's going on, but he's not with them, and they're playing better. So, 2-2 does tend to equal 4.
That is the type of groundbreaking math you get from our meteorology master student Dennis
Master
Weaver.
educated from Master of Science educated Dennis Weaver.
Correct. My winner of the week is going to be myself for winning the fantasy baseball championship, baby.
Okay. All right.
Let's go.
Right.
I mean, not to toot my own horn, but there are chatters, there are whispers of a potential dynasty that's 2 championships in 3 years, along with another third place finish for your boy. It was a long season. Not to toot my own horn too much, but I like to think I had the best team top to bottom throughout the regular season. They came through in the playoffs, and at the end of the day, having good players on good teams that got rested didn't eventually come over to screw me. It tried real hard. But yes, I'm anointing myself a winner of the week for winning the fantasy baseball championship.
Well deserved. Well deserved. And I mean,
Appreciate
Bobby, I'd love to hear your comments on this, but with fantasy baseball more than any other compared to fantasy football, for example, yes, it takes good players. Yes, it takes luck. It takes all those things, but what it really takes the most is good management. And it takes stringent management, making the right pickups, setting the roster, making the right starts on a daily basis. And, Derek was clearly in the top 2, 3 echelon in terms of management this year, along with Bobby Epler. I'll give I don't think I even belong in that group. So
Bottom
that be
2,
as
3,
it will.
Dennis.
Right? No. That's pump the brakes on that.
Putting him down with the likes of AWOL Zig and AWOL JB, Bob.
Well, you haven't even heard my winner of the week, which is our good friend Nathan for picking up a free win in the playoffs, bumping up a spot because Dennis didn't even bother to set his lineup. Dennis, what happened?
It's based on the isn't it based on the regular season standings. Yeah, so it doesn't. Once you're eliminated from the playoffs, it doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, no, it's a big win for Derek. Dynasty is building and well deserved.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner Dennis Weaver.
Right.
Well, that'll pretty much wrap it up. Uh, I'll pull up the Garbage Time Takes Your Money recap from last month. I don't even remember what it was, but I'll pull it up on the next episode just because we're getting pretty late and we want Bob to at least get a little bit of shut eye before he has to wake up. So yeah, Bob, you want to shout out the socials to the people?
Yes, at Garbage Time Takes on X, at Garbage Time Takes on Instagram. You can find the link to our website in the description of this video below. Thanks for tuning in as always. Do we are we planning on doing a Garbage Time and Take Your Money this week, Derek?
Do you have one ready?
I do.
Oh, then sure. I didn't know if you had one ready. Yeah, we can do one. Yeah, why not? Let me pull up let me pull up my Excel sheet real quick. It's probably gonna show up on the Zoom quick. Alright, give me one sec.
Do we think Bobby's going MLB playoffs or football on Sunday?
That's a tough call, Dennis. That's a tough
Or
call.
neither. He could zag. He could zag completely.
It could zag. One other thing while I'm pulling up the spreadsheet, you'll notice I'm not wearing a red shirt. Uh, I still, I never bought it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because we haven't done a pod. We've done like one pod in the last 7 weeks. Um, so yeah, maybe we'll carry it over to next year.
All right. All right. There we
Cause,
go.
cause it feels kind of a
There we go.
wash to do it
Oh,
now. It feels kind of a wash to do it now, considering our
I would say I feel like we need to come up with a new kind of a term to that, even if it wasn't exactly what we agreed, just
sure.
to substitute
Yeah, I
potentially.
can agree with that, but considering the inconsistent pod schedule, um, yeah, yeah. All right. The last thing I have was the Rangers Brewers over under 8 from who knows how long ago. Um, so Bob, while you're giving us the matchup for this week, I'll try and see if I can find that one.
yeah. So we're gonna be going for this week with the overseas barn burner. It is going to be the Buffalo Bills against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Is that in London?
Um,
It's in London.
I think
Yep,
so.
it's in London.
Yeah.
Yep.
So current over under is I'm seeing it right now at CBS is 48 and a half, with the spread being -5.5 for Buffalo. Dennis, your thoughts?
Man, I think the Buffalo Bills looked really great last week against the Miami Dolphins at home up in Buffalo. The Jacksonville Jaguars did not look very good, very disappointing. Honestly, disappointing season for them so far. But they're practically a home team over there in London. Uh, Giving them 5.5 points, I think I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were just over there. I don't know if they came back or not. They were there last week.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I'm
Um,
pretty sure they just stayed over there since they were playing back to
right.
back.
Okay, so that even furthers my take here, which is that they're not going to be dealing with the time difference. They're not going to be dealing with the effects of traveling overseas. The Bills will be. Give me the Jaguars with the 5.5 points. As far as the over under goes, man, I'm gonna say the Bills actually come out a little flat in this one, and that keeps it just on the underside because the Jacksonville Jaguars are not necessarily a team that's gonna take the top off of a defense consistently. I think that this is somewhere in the 2017 range or something like that. So give me the under.
So just to double check, Dennis, since I was checking, you're taking the Jags and the under?
Yep, the Jags and the under.
Okay. Just to briefly recap the one from a month ago, Dennis, me and you came up with the Rangers Brewers over under 8 because it was the day Bob had the impromptu Morgan Wallen tickets, I believe. And so
I see.
it was Rangers Brewers for Friday, August 19th. The Brewers won 6-1. We both took the Rangers and we both took the under, which was 8. So we went 1 for 2 that day.
There we go.
In terms of the Bills and Jaguars, I'm going to take the over because overs, overseas, it's in the name. And then I'm going to take the Bills because I think the Jaguars are probably one of the biggest frauds of the offseason. They got a lot of love from bozo analysts like Pete Prisco. And for whatever reason, a franchise that has done just about as much has had just about as much success as the Lions have had in the past 20 years, getting talked about for squeaking by in a very weak AFC South last year to get into the playoffs and come back against Brandon Staley, which is not impressive. Um, so yeah, I'm just not convinced the Jags are that great of a team. So I'm going to take the Bills to cover in the over in exact opposition to our good friend Dennis Weaver. Bob.
Right, Bobby. Gonna have to split us somehow.
I'm going to take the Jaguars as well to cover the 5.5 points. And I'm going to go with the over here. So I'm going to kind of split it right down the middle in that aspect. Yeah, I think that the Bills still win this game, but I think it is a close game. And I do think that the defense come out looking, instead of the offense is looking flat, I think the defense looks flat, and that kind of leads to the over.
One last thing on this. Should we start, now that it's football season, make this season 3 of Garbage Time Takes Your Money?
I feel like we probably should.
Okay. I'll tally up the results for last week's or for last season's Garbage Time Takes Your Money segments for next episode's podcast. Uh, so we'll have that to look forward to. Now that we're in season 3 of Garbage Time Takes Your Money, we're only a few weeks out from having all 4 major sports active at one time, which is an absolutely bizarre time of the year. And I believe we're about to hit, I believe with today's NFL game, we're hitting like 50 straight days of football, which is unreal. Unreal. So, looking forward to the midweek action. Looking forward to the midweek Conference USA. Looking forward to Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays. We got it all, and we're going to bring it to y'all. Garbage Time Takes Your Money. Bob, one more shout out for the socials.
At Garbage Time Takes on X, at Garbage Time Takes on Instagram. You find the link to our description. Link to our website in the description below. And once again, thank you guys for tuning back in. It's good to be back. Good to be with the guys. You know, bet with us, bet against us, just win, dang it. That's all we have to say.
Humpback Whale play Arizona to cover the spread as well. Throw that out there. Dennis, any last words for the people before we sign off?
Nope, I'm good over here.
All right. As always, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all the support. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Because with our hectic schedules, you'll never know when the next upload comes, so you want to be sure you're ready when it does. Without further ado, we thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of Garbage Time Takes in 3,
2,
1.
Peace.
Peace.